And this idea that if you lose muscle mass, it's gone is just nonsense.
No.
As we see here, this was a 30-pound swing, and it all came back.
We always, it drives me nuts because people always say when you lose weight, they're like, yeah, but you're going to gain it all back again. But you gain a little, like you lose a little muscle, and it's like, yeah, it's gone forever. Like
Right.
we have these weird biases there.
Bringing you a reasoned approach to health and fitness. This is the Phi Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Phi Life Podcast. I'm John Barbin. With me is Brad Pilon, and today we're brought to you by the Total T Clinic. And I got a case study here from a client I've worked with a few, like throughout the years, going back 10, 12 years here. And I want to share with you some of his results and some of the high-level concepts that you can take away when you hear how he did with his multiple transformations. We're going to cover one in 2013, or at least his baseline from 2013 at his best, and then how he re-arrived there here in 2024, and some of the fluctuations along the way. And want to leave you with some impressions on how much your body can really change. That's one thing. And that the scale, once again, the scale's not very good at telling you like your composition or what your current weight is really made of. And we're going to also explain the relative simplicity of getting this done and how we can easily, as Brad says it, which major in the minor, we can get really caught up in little technicalities of carbohydrates and vitamins and mineral supplements and timing things and miss the forest for the trees pretty big time, and not realize that if that stuff is rooted in any science or even anecdotal from people who've tried something very technical and it worked, there's different states that your body can be in, different body compositions where that may or may not work. And I want to help put it in context when what sounds like a quite technical intervention might be useful, and when you're not in a condition to need it yet, and it's kind of wasted energy and it's taking away from getting where you really want to go.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. So we've got some data here. So I'm just gonna share the major changes, and then we'll get into how it happened. So
Can we, before we get going, client, guy, girl, age?
Oh, right. Guy in his mid 40s now, early 40s now. Best condition we got into in 2013. He got into, but I was training him. He got all the way down. He's 5'10", and he got his best condition. He got down to 9.2, as per DEXA, 9.2% body fat, which is very low. This is fully visible abs. If anyone's wondering what 9.2 is, now that's on a guy. Women. We've trained fitness competitors whose final body, just as an example for women, whose finished body fat percentage was 15, 16 with visible abs. But it's because most women's legs will just hold more fat. So it's not the comparable leanness in the abdominal area for a fitness competitor girl and just a guy. Like a guy below 10 is kind of like a woman can achieve that same abdominal look in the teens for a whole body fat percentage, only because they're just holding so much more in their legs. Anyways, either way, visible abs would look good on the beach, sort of thing. Lean mass hit 155 pounds, which is really good for 5'10". That's
beautiful.
That's kind of where we would predict with our Adonis numbers. So that's really good. And he was training hard. Like I was with him. He was training really hard and knows this isn't a novice trainer, like knows what he's doing in the gym and was in a groove here. And achieved a body weight of 177 pounds. This was in 2013. Now, in the 10 following years, he because of his job, he's in the media industry and the film industry and travels a lot and goes stretches of time on the order of years, months and years, where he's traveling in multiple countries. He's on the road. He's outside. He just has no access to working out, like weight training. And even regardless of how physically demanding his job might be, it's not the same as dedicated weight training where you're forcing your muscles to grow, right? So
that's a great point, because I think I get a lot of emails on that with Stop Eat. People be like, well, you know what? I don't do the weight training because I'm really active at my job and I walk 6 miles a day. I'm like, it's not the same, but if you stack those two things, it would be awesome. But nothing really replaces weight training for this reason.
Not for muscle gaining. Not for changing muscles as far as their size and their strength. You can be healthy with an active, like it causes your heart to move blood and, all the health benefits of just activity.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Even if you're kind of lifting stuff for work, it's not the same as dedicated weight training. It's just not. Like, you have to lift weights if you want to force your muscles to grow. It's just full stop. There's no other way around that. So fast forward 10 years to March 2023. Now, again, has not had an opportunity to work out, still traveling, a lot of on-site work. And we're not talking like in a hotel with access to a nice gym. We're talking long days outside on very remote locations. Like, a lot of this is like outdoor type filming, very
Like living
dynamic.
in a tent type of thing is
Pretty remote. Like,
Okay.
I don't know exactly all of the living situations, but what the locations themselves don't lend themselves to having a hotel with a good gym.
Fair
like,
enough.
we're talking about like very remote locations all over the world. So
Gotcha.
this individual just has a real hard time finding a routine when they're busy with like these type of travel schedules. Now, they had gained and lost weight throughout the years, and actually at the beginning of 2023 had almost got to 200 pounds, which is not healthy for this person and at
Not
their
for
body,
5'10".
at their height. And I wish we had a DEX at that time, but we don't. So this is when his doctor prescribed Ozempic, because basically at that weight he's right on the edge of obesity, and his body fat percentage is not good, not feeling good about this, and wants to start like turning a corner here. Finally arrives at some stability here. So in the beginning of 2023, he actually has a place with a gym. Like, he's finally, all of these years of just not being able to do it, finally has a place with a gym. But we did this little interesting experiment, and this will all be instructive in a minute. He started Ozempic, and it really killed his appetite, which is great. It was doing what it was supposed to do, and he kind of dialed it in and started losing weight and getting a lot of feedback from people because they're noticing his weight dropping, and he's starting to feel kind of good about it. And so he's like at 200, which is a lot for him. And he's on his way down to that previous best look, his 9% body fat and 177 pounds body weight. So he's on his way to for what he thinks is, I'm on my way to my best look all over again.
Right.
And within 3 months, like by March 2023, he's 174 pounds.
So
which is
he's dropped
below
his
what his best.
Okay.
Previous best was. And his previous best, he looked really good. I mean, muscular, ripped, looked good. And he shared with me like, hey, look how I'm doing here. And I was like, and we did a DEXA. And he was going to start training. I said, don't train yet. You haven't even had access to a gym yet. Let's do the DEXA first. Let's make a little experiment out of this. Don't touch a weight. Get your DEXA done in March, and then let's start training. So he goes for this DEXA after losing whatever, almost 25 pounds, and he arrives at the same body weight, but 24.6% fat versus 9.2. Which,
so if he's the same weight with a bunch of extra fat, he's lost muscle mass.
Yeah. Oh, here,
we just don't know when, right?
We don't know the curve. We don't know exactly how it happened, but we know for years, he really just didn't have access to training. So
right. So the easy answer would be to point the Ozempic, but the more realistic answer would be he's been losing since he stopped training.
Yeah. And now over those years, he's had moments of training, but nothing consistent.
Push-ups in the bedroom type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even if he had access to a gym, it would be like for a year and then gone, and then a little bit and then gone. But we know for sure 2021, 2022, the years leading up to this, almost virtually no weight training. Just couldn't based on the schedule.
Right. Okay.
So his lean mass went from 155 pounds to 126. It's a long way down, right?
So wait, lean went to 126.
Yeah, almost 30 pounds, 29 pounds.
And so total fat-free mass would be in the 130s?
Yeah, because if you just add the bones, like about we count his bone,
6 pounds of bone mass. So you're looking
his
at
bones are about 6.5 pounds.
Exactly what we would consider at 5'10" for a non-active middle-aged male. So he went all the way down to just what you're typically like existing. You didn't train. You
never worked
to
out.
work, came home, watched Netflix. That's pretty much exactly our number. Yeah.
Right. And then his total pounds of fat on his body went from 15.7 pounds at his best to 43 pounds of fat. And all of that's hidden. If all you do is step on the scale, at his best, he was 177. Here he's 174. Some people might be like,
based on scale, he wins. He actually did better.
Right. But based on composition, this is not good.
No.
And where your visceral fat's up, that's the fat that you kind of don't want. Like this is not this is a dramatic composition change.
This is
Yeah.
our evidence again why weight on its own, outside of extremes, is a very poor marker of health. So if the same guy at 5'10" was 300 pounds, we'd be like, not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And if he was 110 pounds, we could say not healthy. But in that BMI sort of range of, the high teens to the high 20s, you're just guessing at what that composition is, and that matters. So that's why we like circumferences better. But this is just a great example of why the scale alone. And I think he would probably, if he looked in the mirror, would kind of be like, this does not look the same. But other than, it's just more proof that weight in general is not a good measure in those ranges.
Well, and on that note, I'm glad you brought that up. On that note, and I was trying to be delicate with this. I knew his composition was terrible, and well, because it's too bad because we don't have any good pictures here. Like he didn't want.
So you literally talked him out of weight training for an
No,
experiment. You're like,
no,
you look
no.
like hell, but for me, I need these numbers. Yeah.
I'm trying to be a good coach here. So he was telling himself a bit of a lie that he's like close and he just needs a couple weeks in the gym and he's like right back to that great shape he used to be in.
Right.
And because the scale, it's really hard to believe you can be this far off. Like it's hard to believe you're 30 pounds of lean mass off and you're whatever this is, like
but you
25
feel the
pounds
same,
of fat.
Right? Like you don't fundamentally feel different.
You put the same clothes on. Like you only weigh you're like, you don't take up any more space or any less space. You kind of feel like you're the same. So this individual kind of thought they were really close. And I'm like, no, you're kind of far away. Like the scale, forget what the scale says, forget what other people are saying. And he didn't really want to take a picture. So we don't really have a good picture of him in this condition.
But that's also evidence that you kind of knew.
Well, yeah. So anyways, so I think he finally got the picture after a while, like, oh yeah, I got some work to do here. And then dedicated training for about, 10, 11 months here. And just recently did a DEXA scan and arrived at 10.3% body fat. So all the way down from 24 to 10. And that's lost almost 18 pounds of fat.
In 10 months.
Yeah. Which is great.
Good job.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And all the way back up to 155 pounds lean mass. So gained 29 pounds of lean mass.
Wow.
Almost 30
Which is
pounds.
actually, according to everybody, impossible because he's also losing fat and you can't do both at the same time. So
And he's on Ozempic.
And that's a killer, right? Right there. Ozempic making you lose lean mass is just, at least at an individual level, from all the people we've seen who are training while on Ozempic, it doesn't seem to be the issue people are making it out to be at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so Ozempic killed appetite, dieting, enough to lose 18 pounds of fat, not weight, but fat in 10 months, while also gaining lean mass.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so lost 25 pounds of fat, gained 29 pounds of lean mass, and arrived at 179 pounds, which is within a couple pounds of his best look. And I maintain, since I was seeing both of them, I think he looks as good as that best look. Relatively speaking, he's right there.
Yeah.
Like 10.3, 9.2%, whatever. He looks really good. And along the way, he was on TRT, so that's fixed. So it's not like testosterone. Like
Wait. So he was on the TRT when he lost all the muscle as well and gained the fat.
Yeah.
So then that kind of, the whole TRT makes everything automatic and perfect. It just kind of got killed right there, right? So TRT alone doesn't do much. TRT with training and probably proper diet, synergistic. And then Ozempic alone might cause muscle loss, but Ozempic with training, not so much. So, and with the good thing about TRT, I mean, if we want to talk about a good thing, is from this point of view, it was set, right? So you can't argue that but he was eating a different diet and so his test was higher or lower or his sleep was off. It's set at 800 or whatever he's got it at, and so then the variables are the training and the diet, and the Ozempic was helping with the diet. Okay.
So it's just another example that you can't testosterone your way to muscle. Now, again, TRT is not like taking steroid level anabolics. Like it's
No.
you know, he comes in whatever high normal 700-800 something like that. But it's not that the lower calories killed testosterone because we have it fixed at a number.
Right. But you can definitely be based on this. And I'm assuming with TRT, your free test is obviously high too, right? Because
Well, it stays with the ratio, right?
Okay. So then at what we would consider relatively higher levels for our age group, it's still very easy to lose mass by not training.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we could sum that up. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you're saying he looks just as good, if not better, but the one variable, he's a decade older.
It's a decade
so that's
older.
also kind of cool. Yeah.
Decade older, but looks just
him.
as good. Yeah. I think I can get him to agree to an after picture. I'm just not sure we're going to find a skinny fat picture, if you will.
Yeah.
Because who wants that picture?
Yeah.
But we'll see what we can do. So what are the takeaway notes from this that this transformation you can learn? What's instructive here? So I've got some notes here. You want me to start, or do you got some?
Yeah. No, you start, and I'll come in big picture. Go.
All right. So
Okay.
first of all, I'm coaching this person through the workouts. You know how simple these workouts are? Just whole body.
Yep.
Whole body 3-4 times a week, and just get what you can done. There's nothing fancy here. We're not doing splits where you're like chest one day and like any fancy. Just squat, push, pull, like real basic stuff, like big
Yeah.
compound movements.
At a volume and weight that I'm guessing he therefore wasn't so sore that he couldn't do it again 2 days later. So he
Right.
squat on Monday,
Right.
squat on Wednesday,
Right.
kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, which
Smart.
people, yes, you can do that every other day. Every other day workouts, whole body. Now this person's is good. Their form is good. This has been grooved a while ago. So there was no learning curve here. There was just get back to it and get to your intensity level. Like re-arrive on your way back to what you know is a legitimate workout. So that we have to put the caveat. This person knows what they're doing in the gym. So it's not hard for them to just be like, that's what I'm doing. All right, I'm doing it. Right. So,
And I will quickly just sub in for that based on what we know from research papers, for the average person, weight training machines make that learning scale very, very small. So you could get to every other day workouts, full body workouts, a press, push, pull, essentially, where the learning isn't the issue anymore. You can groove it quickly and still get similar results.
yep.
Right?
And these were like hour-long workouts, good, proper warm-up and then go. Just get going.
Yeah.
So not spending excessive amounts of time in the gym. And just because he's not going to do more than that. Like there's a limited time you can even put to this.
Yeah.
So now that's the workout part. So just real basic workout, nothing fancy, just get it done. The second,
So let me so that he was
ahead.
able to do a full squat, push, pull in about 45, 60 minutes, including the warm up. So that should help people kind of understand this wasn't 20 sets of squats, 20 sets of pushes, 20 sets of pulls, because it had to get done in 1 hour. So just normal sets and rep ranges.
yeah. And given that you're repeating those muscle groups like every other day, you don't need to hit them a lot on that day.
No,
Because you're hitting
exactly.
them over and over again. And now
The
he added
volume
in
over a month is good.
yeah. And he added in like a little assistance work on like direct on shoulders and arms and stuff. But this particular person's arms are kind of grow really fast, so he doesn't actually even have to attend to them. Again,
Just
these
solar
are just
powered.
yeah. But these are like nuanced things where if you have a muscle group that it just grows quickly, you just don't have to spend time on it. You can spend time somewhere else. So, anyways, that's the exercise part. The interesting thing on the diet. Now, the Ozempic, he was like, the Ozempic really helps me pick something to do with diet and just stay on it. But even with the Ozempic present, this particular person, he's half Italian and he's half French. So this person's got a background of parents who make really good food on both sides,
Right.
and has the palate for pasta, has the palate for breads and cheeses, like a lot of rich stuff, and really enjoys it. And he finds all of that moreish. One serving of pasta turns into 5. Even with Ozempic, he's told me like I can out eat that when I'm at a family dinner or like my mom or my aunt's pasta. He's like, I can't not once it's present, I'm going, even right through Ozempic.
So it's not a hunger thing as much as it's a craving, familiarity. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a familiarity thing when you're, I mean, this all happens. Like if you're, quote unquote home for the holidays, you're just going to eat more. It's a familiarity thing. It's your surroundings. So even with Ozempic present and doing its thing with like, reducing his appetite, he can still go through it when his like preferred food, like his really preferred foods are there, like nostalgic foods he grew up on. And his mother's cooking is something he can't resist. If it's there, he's going to eat a lot of it, right? So he had to limit. He's even in this case, he has to really control with Ozempic. He's really control when he's at these sort of events, right? So what he found was those type of carbs are just moorish for him. Me and Brad call it moorish. I don't know if that's somebody else's phrase, but basically one bite just leads to so many more bites, and it's very difficult to not eat more.
Food or food type you're most likely to overeat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so for no other reason than just to control things, he just started eating less and less carbs till he kind of almost turned into a keto style where it was mostly just protein and fat with some berries and a little bit of vegetables.
Right.
And that became his eating style. So carbs were pretty low, like for sure under 100 grams a day, probably closer to 50-ish, which is more or less all the way to what you would call a keto style diet.
Were the carbs low on his 2013 diet that got him down to there in the first place?
Kinda, but not like, but not as, yes, they were. And he's just refamiliarizing himself with like, I have to get back to that.
Right.
And that was just for no other reason than it's just what worked.
Yeah. Like my moorish is not carbs specifically, crunchy carbs. So like those mini Chips Ahoy cookies, like once I have 2 of them, taken from the kids or something like that, I'm eating boxes, packages.
Yeah. So basically he knows his moorish ones, and those were the ones he really controlled. And then it kind of led to another one. Then he got it. It obviously got pretty fat adapted because this wasn't really affecting his energy level or his workouts. So, obviously he gained 29 pounds of lean mass right back up to his max lean mass. So it worked fine. And once he had a little system going, he didn't want to upset the apple cart by, he's like, oh, now I can put one back. He's like, no, let's just leave it until we arrive where we want to arrive.
If it ain't broke,
don't fix it. So again, so far we're talking about pretty simple interventions. We're talking about a simple every other day push-pull workout, whole body push-pull squat, right? That's not, it's not complicated. Then the next thing he did was learn that, you know what, the simplest way to make this work is to just reduce all the moorish carbs and only have a few in there that I can control. And that was a little bit of trial and error. Again, he's done this before, so it wasn't hard for him to identify the ones that had to go first. And then
you kind of know. Sometimes you fight it, but
and then you arrive
protein,
where it works.
About 100 and over, like our standard.
Yeah. Well, and given the carbs were so low, definitely went higher and higher on the protein just to make up the difference. You got to put something in, and we're just going to go straight up in fat. So this is actually a relatively high protein diet he was on. But again, not because we discussed like the merits of exactly a certain amount of protein per gram per pound of body weight. It was just like, got to eat something. Yeah. And when all the carbs are like so low, it just arrived at protein really worked. It was very satiating too. Red meat he was almost going kind of carnivore here. It sort of just arrived, again, doesn't care, not ideologically, just sort of arrived at what was satisfying was, steaks. Like became a staple. Like red meat became a staple.
What was doable, actually, right?
It was what was doable. He could still enjoy it. Like he'll make a really good steak with a sous vide or something. Like he would tell me about how he would prepare stuff. So he could really lean into a good ribeye. Even if he couldn't even get through the whole thing, it was still, you could still almost indulge, as it were, while you were dieting. I don't know how else to say that. So it's not just protein. It's not just protein shakes. He's like enjoying high quality meat and high quality foods, just in a way that allows him to keep reducing. And one of the things we were really working on was like, these habits you're building now, while you've got Ozempic on board, like really helping control your appetite. Like we got to build these so when we so he's in the middle of tapering off now that we finished the DEXA and he's arrived at kind of an ideal body weight here. Yeah. Now we're starting to taper up. Him and his physician are starting to taper off because we've discussed like, you're here. and you've spent a year building these habits. You've seen how you arrived here.
Right.
You're at what me and Brad would say is close to your max muscle mass for your height. And given the amount of time he can put into this, and we've discussed this, he's asked me, can I get 5 more pounds of muscle on me? And I'm like, probably, but the effort that'll take, you probably don't want to sweat that effort.
And the effort to hold on to that as well.
Yeah, to get there and to hold on to it for what? You already look great. Like it's not for me to tell him that he should stop, but we've discussed at length that you're at the 80-20, like for the next 20%, it's going to feel like 80% more work. It's just going to be a lot of work to squeeze a couple more pounds of mass onto this body.
For no extra benefit.
Oh, he looks great. Like he looks great. So there's no real reason to go.
See, that
any
is
further.
my concern with the Ozempics out there. All the people on Ozempic, and you're letting Ozempic work because it does work, and you're letting it do all the work. Is eventually you're going to want to get off or taper off, and if you haven't used that time to build up habits, routines, and systems, then you're going to get off of Ozempic, and you're just going to go back to how you normally ate, but you're going to be hungrier because you've lost weight. So you're just going to drive yourself back up to where you were. So using that time on Ozempic to build up those good habits or at least learnings, right? Be like, hey, if I really need to, this guy knows that he can cut carbs, go a bit heavier on the red meat, get back in training, and knows he can get there twice, right? So, but with a lot of the Ozempics, like people just on Ozempic, but just living that Ozempic lifestyle, it's doing all the work. I'm worried they're not getting those learnings.
Right. And we've reviewed research identifying this. So you have to take that opportunity if you're going to use Ozempic, if you're just dieting in general and you get some momentum and you get somewhere, you've got to build an exercise habit and some kind of eating habit that you can take with you after you taper off. Like it's just,
right.
I mean, it's in the research. We know that like a paper recently came out showing that the people who had the best results afterwards had built an exercise habit, and the exercise is what lasted, right? So it's just what you need to do during this time. And if you don't exercise, we saw he just lost lean mass. So even though he lost,
it's just so profound, that it does seem to be the answer. It's a habit we should be building in my opinion, in like gym class in elementary school. Not only just movement, but like training, monkey bars, that kind of, just the understanding that sometimes movement just makes things better, right? So the benefit of just going for a walk, to going out and playing, to getting a sweat on, to then as they get older to lifting. But it is just profound that seems to be the answer for most things more often than not.
Yeah, and it's just unfortunate that the data shows just most people won't work out. If we don't build that habit early in life, I don't know how it's hard to start it, or at least it seems it's hard for people to start it later in life. It's just not part of how they imagine their day to go.
If you start it with, let's say, a trainer and a program, and your first run at it, you see significant results, that habit will become a habit. If you start it January 1st, 2025, and you do it until February and nothing really changed, it just becomes that thing you try every once in a while. So if you're going to jump into it, you got to jump into it, see the change, and then you're good.
Yeah, and this is an example. In this case, this is an example of someone who built that habit long ago, but part of his lifestyle with his career, he just takes him away from the routine where you can employ like a training habit. Right. So even if your career or other circumstances pulls you away from it, you can recapture it the minute you have those circumstances back in front of you. When you have a gym, you have a routine where you can get to the gym.
Yeah. And he's in a situation, it's not like he just pack a couple kettlebells in back of his trunk. Like he is No, I'm not talking driving a couple hours. I'm talking flying to different continents. Like it's not conducive to working out at all. Period.
This type of lifestyle. And then if your daily routine is a long routine, there's no time in the day. It's like these are like full go days. So
I've heard that like filming is brutal I was just talking to somebody who's an actor, and they were like, no, it's like an 18-hour day. And I'm like, yeah, but like 18 hours of work? And he was like, yeah, like 18 hours of work. And I was like, well, that sounds horrible. So,
Well, you got to get it done. There's
Yeah.
time. There's time limits on all of this. Budgets run out. There's something as simple as light. Like, oh, we have to film at this time of day just to capture the light. Put it this way: you're at the mercy of the filming schedule, and your workout just will go to hell unless the filming schedule happens to be perfectly set up where there's a window for a workout.
yeah, this guy's the other actors on the set. One of them is the A-lister that has a movie obligation in May. So it's like
Right.
got like they just got to pound through until so
Yeah, just go.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so if you're listening and you've got this type of situation
Lifestyle.
with your career lifestyle, it is hard. It's just reasonable. And in those cases, I guess the story here is you can get it back, but maybe not while you're in the middle of that whatever's going on that's just drawing you away from a routine. But when you ever have a chance at a routine, it'll come back. It'll come back and you can get there. So you're not like doomed or anything.
Yeah.
And this idea that if you lose muscle mass, it's gone is just nonsense.
No.
As we see here, this was a 30-pound swing and it all came back.
We always it drives me nuts because people always say when you lose weight, they're like, yeah, but you're going to gain it all back again. But you gain a little, like you lose a little muscle, and it's like, yeah, it's gone forever. Like
Right.
we have these weird biases there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like a muscle memory thing.
Yeah.
And so there's two things with muscle memory, meaning you've built it before and you've regained it. That's kind of nice to know that it's going to come back, like all of it's going to come back. And the other, so in that case, yes, you're regaining something you've built before, but also if you've never worked out before, you're going to get naive muscle growth, so it's going to grow fast anyways.
Yeah.
So
you kind of you win-win.
You win in both cases. Of all the things, you win in both cases when it comes to trying to build muscle, with a routine and with the ability to push. Now, the other thing here is, along the way, people saw him getting in shape this time, and were asking. He was telling me about a buddy who's asking him, a buddy that's losing weight and asking him like, oh, but my trainer's got me like doing very specific things with carbs and like timing out my like various
Carb
starches and all this.
cycles and
Like specific carbs and all this stuff. And I was explaining, I was like, no, like all of that tinkering with macronutrients doesn't even register until you're like single digit body fats in a way where you could like either see it in the mirror or feel it at the workout or just throughout the day.
I feel a lot of coaches, it's almost a recency bias, right? They remember that 1 or 2 or 3 times that they've done a competition or a photo shoot. They remember those last 2 or 3 weeks. And then they apply what we do in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which may or may not work, right? But it's just what you do. It's like we all allow ourselves to really experiment because you can almost feel the difference. Then you apply that to everyone in every stage of the process. And it's a mistake to do because you're taking the credit away from the true magic of just monotonous consistency, which is the whole magic, right? The whole beauty of this thing is realizing that it's the monotonous consistency of discipline that gets it all done. But if you apply the kind of magic you might see your body do in that, like from that 7% body fat, get on a stage and then you tweak a couple things and you feel a bit different. And then you assume that same thing is going to happen to your 48-year-old stay-at-home mom who's just starting her process and she's 60 pounds overweight. And you're like, what you need to do is cycle your carbs and simple sugars. And you're like, no, what she needs to do is build the habit, right?
Right. Very, very first thing, as Brad said, build the habit. And the habit this person got all the way to almost 10% body fat with the simplest thing, every other day, whole body workout and just cut carbs. And that's it. There was nothing else going on. There was no thought to when he ate, just get through the day and keep your calories lower. So basically keto. Didn't really plan it, just sort of arrived there.
Yeah.
So, and to Brad's point, you can get so caught in the minutia of what to do with timing your carbs or different carbs or cycling carbs or when do you add certain fats. So where does all this come from? It comes from people getting on stage. It comes from you're already have visible abs for guys and girls. Like you're all the way to like looking way beyond the average person. For everyone else, you're long since done. Like
you're
you've
playing with the
finished.
sharpness of your photo in real life, basically,
Yes.
right? You're
Yeah.
That's when you're tweaking things back and forth on
Yeah.
on your Instagram thing. But it's
And in this case, as just in the last few weeks, as he's approached 10% body fat, he's only now just noticed. I'm kind of like don't have a lot of shove in the gym like I have had for the whole year.
right.
And we did a little experiment where we just did a bit of extra carbs in the morning. Carbs he just hasn't been eating.
Yeah.
And that day his workout was way better. Got like really pumped up. Just had a lot of shove. One set to the next. He just had lots of endurance, and
Yep.
the workout overall was just like more powerful, and it was just better with a bit of extra carbs on board. Now, this wouldn't have happened even a few months ago when he still had more body fat to go. And I'm not talking 24% body fat. I'm talking 12, 13, 14.
11, 12. Yeah.
Yeah, just now as he's getting around the 10-ish, he's like, oh, I could use a few carbs, but that workout went better. And it doesn't mean he can't get a workout done without them, like still staying with his keto style. It just means that he noticed when we added in a few carbs right before his workout that he's like, wow, I powered through that workout. And this is important, especially for this person. Those carbs weren't moreish. They didn't lead him to want more and more carbs later because the effect of the workout sort of overwhelmed that feeling, and it was all back to normal as soon as he was done working out.
Yeah.
So
and that may be a mental thing, not mental as in like in his head, but like actual brain chemistry thing, right? Like more than it would be, a complete lack of glycogen in his muscles, etc. It would just maybe even just a slight top up where you're realizing there's some sugar there to use. It doesn't need an extreme scientific explanation. You're just like, yeah, but it just made that person feel a bit better and able to push again. Mm-hmm. Right. And the problem is especially with examples like that, is it will opine on it's the muscle glycogen versus liver glycogen versus the dopamine. And then we'll get a theory. And if that theory is proven wrong, then you're like, yeah, it didn't work. You're like, no, they still felt better. And that's the key, right? Is that a little bit of sugar, a little bit of carbohydrate when you're very depleted makes the extra push easier, which makes sense, right? He may not have enough free fatty acids at that level to make up for the lack of carbohydrate, whereas before he did, right? So just a little bit of common sensing there. Just like, yeah, if I can just get a bit more into feel good, I'm good, right? Mm-hmm. You don't need, the exact chemical pathway that occurred through. It's the common sensing your way through a diet too, that we, because of our love of the mechanism and the 5-hour-long podcasts on the fate of a certain leucine to dileucine pathway, that you forget that it's just a common sense approach that's going to actually help you with the mundane consistency that'll get you results, right? So I like that story because you and him were just problem solving.
Yep. And yeah, I guess maybe people don't want to hear this, that it's just the mundane consistency, but that's kind of all it is.
Yeah. And as a trainer, it's hard, right? Like when I work with those hockey guys and it's every other day and it's either pulling a weighted sled back and forth or doing sprints or some squats, so legs. And then it's some push, some pull, and then throwing a med ball around. And it's literally different variations of that same workout for an entire off season. Mm-hmm. And funny enough, the players love it. It's the people outside the players or handlers. They're like, aren't you going to split it up and change the rep ranges to make it more explosive? And you're like, no, they're just doing the work, right? And it's just the ones who are most consistent are the ones that are going to see the best improvement, not the ones who played with percentages and rep ranges at the expense of just consistently getting the work in.
It's like the exceptional results are achieved through what looks like unexceptional routine.
I love toothbrush as a great example, right? You don't come out of a dentist appointment with 0 cavities and someone be like, what pressure do you use when you brush your teeth? And is it a different angle? Do you change toothbrushes? The same toothbrush Monday and Wednesday? And then have you thought of like intermittent brush fasting where you brush hard one day and soft? You're like, no, I just brush my teeth. Floss occasionally. Like it's funny that but when it comes to exercise, you want that minutia. And I think it's because that minutia is what drives a lot of social media. So we're conditioned to think the micro topics are what cause the effect.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like I don't know if this is going to offend anybody, but if you haven't been there, you don't know. And if you haven't
Yeah.
made it to that type of conditioning and you haven't experienced the mundane progress to exceptional results,
Yeah.
it's easy for you to get caught up in the minutia thinking it's a specific micronutrient or a specific way to combine carbs and fats at a certain time of day. And but anyone who's got in shape knows it has nothing to do with that. Like
No.
it was the effort, and it was the consistent effort over and over and over again. Then at the end, you can kind of look so good. People are like, there's no way it was that. I didn't say it was easy, it's just simple.
See,
Right?
it was just mundanely boring, consistent application of
Right.
effort.
Right.
Right,
But
yeah.
the end result is super rare. Most people can't
Yeah.
get in that shape.
You know what's hard too is that you could, like a robot, lose 0.5 pounds of weight every week for weeks and not really look different. And then 1 week, that last 0.5, you're like, oh, I look different. And a mistake you can make is assuming what you did in the last 2 days caused that. Where you're like, but I ate a banana that was extra spotty yesterday. It must be the bananas. Right? But it's just the fact that it takes a bit. We always use the example of like a statue of David wrapped in a big blanket, right? You don't see the shape of the statue because of the blanket. And every time that blanket gets a little thinner, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I see shoulders, right? Like it takes a couple removal of layers before you see something. Then a couple more removal of layers and you see something else. So if you don't realize that you can have consistent results, but the visual results will be intermittent, every time you get in the visual result, you're going to look back a day or two, sometimes 3, for what caused it and convince yourself that that was it. I find that happens a lot.
Yeah. And that's for anyone who's gone through all the layers of being, let's just say, on a weight loss routine and also, maintaining or gaining some muscle along the way. You're going to have like the shape you were in the first month or so. Let's say it took 5, 6, 7 months. Then a couple months later, you're playing in a new general shape with a bit more definition, a different shape that you're kind of get familiar with. And then, as Brad said, a couple of days look one way, a couple of days look another, but all of it looks different than 3 months ago. But you're fluctuating in the new 3 months. Then 3 months from now, everything looks even better. But again, day to day, you're like, you're like, whoa, whatever happened, I woke up, that looks good. And then tomorrow, you're like, oh, what happened to you? I don't have yesterday's look. But you're functioning in an overall better look than 3 months ago. And to Brad's point, you can feel or you can trick yourself into thinking whatever you did yesterday, I'm just going to do that again. And then, but the next day doesn't really show up in the mirror. There's too much going on with your body on a day-to-day basis as far as like water and just how hydrated, how you slept, like what you ate. And when you get leaner, it shows up in the mirror a little bit more dramatically than you expect, but in both directions. You can look better than you haven't done anything, you just look better today, and then you haven't done anything, you look kind of not as good tomorrow.
Exactly. The other part I want to bring up is in terms of the mundane consistency of effort is when you first start working out, there is a conversation in your head that happens after a certain amount of reps where your arm is being like, that's good. And your brain goes, no, we got 2 more in us. Let's go. Right. You have that conversation and you're forcing your way through. But then after months of training, you kind of know that, okay, I can do 40s at whatever exercise for 8. You just kind of know that's your number. And the effort starts to disappear because it's just complacency. I do 40 for 8. But you're like, but you could have had that conversation and done 10. And so a lot of times the hardest part of this process is remembering the part that's mundanely consistent is your effort. And so if 40 pounds for 8 was effort at the beginning, but halfway through it's no longer effort, it's just routine, you're not getting the same results. And that's where people interject all the complexity into their workout to try to avoid that hard conversation with yourself and be like, am I pushing here? Could I have gotten 1 more rep? Right? It's that sort of thing. You have the mundane consistency is there, but not the mundane consistency of effort in the gym. And that tends to derail people.
And if somebody's thinking right now, I got to put effort in for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what? What
You
did
don't have
think
to,
was-
but you probably want to, be honest. Yeah.
I think I should do this caveat on every single podcast. You don't have to do anything. Like
Nope.
if you don't care about the look and shape of your body, or you don't want to change it from what it is, then don't change anything.
Yeah,
And
you
it won't
probably live in
change.
a country with great healthcare. You have to do anything, right?
Well, whatever.
But
I mean,
yeah.
if you don't want to change the look or shape of your body, or even how it feels, and you're
Yeah.
happy with it, well, you're probably not even listening to us. If that's the case.
Yeah,
but
good point.
but if you have any thought to changing the look, shape, or feel of your body, then you have to
Do it.
some amount effort
Something.
more than what you're doing right now. Otherwise, it won't change. Like that's just
Yeah.
like this is to get
Because
it.
it's exactly the way it should be given the effort you're putting in. You
Right.
look exactly the way your body is optimal at the shape you are. You're
Yes.
optimal for what you're doing.
Right. Now to expand Brad's effort point, the mundane effort does get a little bit easier when you're not necessarily trying to push it out of its current shape, but maintain. So again,
Yes.
cycling back to this example with this client, I think we're fine at 10% here. I'm kind of trying to talk him out of trying to push it down to 9, just because like I know he's just not going to want to put that much more work in just to
Yeah.
get to 9.
Plus,
But
we're nowhere
now-
near summer yet. So, no, or maybe we are.
But he can
You
coast.
are.
He can coast into. Now he can start scaling back the overall perceived effort to hold it at 10. So to go from where he was to here is some amount effort more than to just stay here. It's not zero now. It's not zero, because as we've seen historically with this, as I've seen historically with this client, when the effort for the gym drops to 0 and it's redirected at career and all the other things that draw his effort away, he tends to lose muscle mass and he tends to gain fat mass. So it's going to be something more than it was, but it's not going to be as hard as it was to get here in the first place.
Right.
And so that's our next, I don't know, mini hill to climb, or our next phase now is tapering down the Ozempic and discovering the new effort, some lower new effort level to stay here and keep this going now that he has an established routine.
And you have two distinct pathways to go there, right? You have what a lot of people do, which is, okay, I'm going to stay consistent on the diet, tracking possibly, but I'm cutting back to 2 to 3 times a week on my workouts, and I'm cutting down the volume, and I'm that's the part of my lifestyle I'm loosening up on. Or it's I'm consistently going to work away at the gym because I actually enjoy that, so I can loosen up a bit on the diet because I really want to eat. So it's funny, we go kind of one of two ways there, right? You're like, I'm going to introduce more food, I'm willing to keep up this exercise routine. Or people go, I'm willing to track my food and really stay clean on that because I don't enjoy the exercise as much. That's your two options.
Yeah, I guess I want to clarify, effort doesn't just mean how hard he's pushing in the gym. Effort is the whole thing. Like how much mental effort is going into the
Saying no
controlling.
to M&Ms at the movies. And you're like,
I mean, in this particular case, even with Ozempic, like it was still moreish food could still get a hold of him. So it's not like it's not like a magic bullet where if you, let's say you're listening and you're like, maybe I should try Ozempic. You've never tried it, but you've heard about it, and this sounds like dramatic. It's not just going to wipe out all of your desire for food, and now you can just like a machine just put in fuel in like packets of meal replacements, and you're like, well, I just don't care about food anymore. And no, like you can, if there's something that you desire, you could still overdo it. It's just now your ability to control it you have a heightened ability to control it because there's less food chatter. I know I keep coming back to food chatter.
food chatter
I don't know
from
really how else to say it.
From my experience with people on Ozempic, it's that they eat the same as but they get full way easier. They snack less. But when it comes down to cravings, we have the same cravings. Just if we go out for ice cream, I eat mine and they eat half or something like that, right? Like the controls are a little bit different, but the cravings are still kind of there when it comes to like foods that you're emotionally attached to, if that makes sense.
Right.
So yeah.
And even if he's gonna have it, he can't get it all in. Like
No.
I know that this person can crush a ribeye of almost any size without Ozempic.
Skill.
And it might be his favorite thing. Also, I know he can cook one really well. But on Ozempic, he tells me, he's like, I actually can't get through that one right now. But normally, like, I can dummy one of those. So instead, some of it just has to get saved. And, saving steak's not the most fun thing. But that's just an example of even his favorite food. If he's going to kind of indulge it, the Ozempic still holds off on getting through all of it.
Crazy off topic now, but I want to opine on this. It would be curious to look at a trial similar to the 100 grams of protein per day trial, where you gave people not on Ozempic and people on Ozempic both 100 grams of radio labeled protein. And I would be curious as to the serum amino acid peak of the normal person versus the Ozempic person. And if the Ozempic person saw more prolonged elevated amino acids than the non-Ozempic, because that could actually change training and post-workout nutrition. Yeah, it'd just be super interesting to see. Someone should do that for me.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, I guess, and to close out the Ozempic topic and how it controls appetite. Again, this particular client, 10 years ago, I keep saying he got in his best shape without the influence of Ozempic. So just doing it the old fashioned way. Let's say it that. Yep. And so he was acutely aware this time around, like, I've got Ozempic on board. He's noticing right away, like back then that was 10 out of 10 diet effort. With Ozempic, it feels more like a 4 out of 10. There's still effort, but the Ozempic really allowed him to channel some. You know what's interesting? It kind of makes you channel more. You can take more of that effort and put it into the gym versus constantly the food battle.
Yeah, okay.
It's almost like you've got a bit more reserve for the gym. You could almost argue that as long as you have the gym habit in place, it would actually be easier to work out hard while you're dieting with the presence of Ozempic, because it's helping you win the food battle while you can take some of that mental effort and put it over into the gym.
Yeah.
But the old way, I mean, so much of your effort, the old way, for him, so much effort had to go into the diet portion when Ozempic wasn't around back when we got him down to his best weight then. So anyways, it's just a few different things to talk about there. But he was aware this time around, I better have these habits as best I can grooved for when we taper off the Ozempic, because he knows some of that food chatter is going to come back. So he wants to be fully ready for it if and when it comes back, to however much it comes back.
I like my curious point is the workout program, only because I've held the conviction that, I mean, ever since we started working with people, specifically with women, the intensity without intent, so just going to the gym and jumping around a lot, getting a sweat and thinking you're burning calories, versus the women who go in, predominantly train lower body, like a squat, a lunge, and then some upper body, some mobility work. For some reason, that dedication to those sort of the bigger lifts that include the legs, which is well over 50% of all your lean mass is in your legs. They seem to get the results. And I notice again with the hockey guys, same thing, right? The application of just heavy training, but not heavy as in like power lifted, just really focused on making sure you're training your legs in a way that isn't just like 20 minutes of jumping jacks to get your heart going, but actually, oh my gosh, my legs are exhausted and stairs are hard. That seems to be a bit of the magic to this whole process, because I see it in elite athletes and I see it at stay-at-home moms who just are trying to get in shape for the summer. Is the ones who have all that intensity without intent. They're just jumping around. They're, just doing stuff, versus the ones that are methodically getting better and stronger at a few key lifts that involve the lower body seem to get the best results.
Yeah.
I think it's just application of that effort.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you only have so much effort in a day.
Yeah.
So the more efficient you use it on the things that get you the most bang for your buck, that's the key.
Right.
And okay, so we got to wrap this thing up here. You got any closing thoughts, or?
That was it. So mine is again, it's just another example of the mundane consistency of effort. It's another example of building muscle while losing fat through mundane consistency. It's the lack of foo-foo magic in the workout, but it is effort with intent. So it was a lot of like squats, push, pull, right? No other sort of magic added in there. And then the diet was a controlled diet with the application of just a little bit of self-reflection and thought of like, these foods are moreish to me, so I'm going to lessen how much of them I'm exposed to, as opposed to, again, the magic foo-foo cycling different colored foods at different times with different ratios of the sun type of stuff that everybody's so we're just so caught up in the minutia all over the place, and then people are getting more and more frustrated that they're not getting results, so they dig for more and more minutia. And it's just like, if you could, we just focus that effort on just the beauty of the consistency, and then make sure your efforts actually being applied to the right place, you're gonna see results. It might take 10 months instead of 10 days, but you're gonna see results.
Yep, that's good. And I'll just add, with or without Ozempic, training, you have to work out if you want to gain lean muscle mass. And with or without Ozempic, if you're in a major calorie deficit, you're going to lose lean muscle mass. So neither in neither case, your effort and your consistent effort, as Brad said, is the key to all of this. It doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to be consistent.
Yeah.
All right. So, I think that's a good place to leave it for
Absolutely.
now. All right. Well, appreciate everybody watching. Thanks for being here
And listening.
Yes. And listening. So for Brad Pilon, I'm John Barbin, and that's your Phi Life Podcast.